All right, welcome back, everybody. Back with a quick little review here, this time for Eastern Europe's past week of DPC Dota, as we are starting to close in on the ending of this first tour. As mentioned in my previous video, if there are going to be any tiebreakers, which there are bound to be tiebreakers, it's just a matter of which division, which region, and stuff like that. When we know once we know what those tiebreaker matchups will be and when they'll be taking place, I'll be making preview videos for each and every one of those. So feel free to check those out. And if you don't want to miss those, subscribe, notifications, all that kind of stuff. Especially because for those tiebreakers, they're going to be going up only a little bit before those take place, because there's not a whole lot of time before the tiebreakers usually take place. It's going to be quite short notice. So again, if you don't want to miss that, hit up all this stuff down below. All right, getting into this review here, as per usual, going to be starting off with the past matches of this week. Starting off, we had PuckChamp taking down Hellraisers. This was a pretty entertaining one. Again, Hellraisers were undefeated coming into this week. They had a little bit of a shakier time this week, similar to Undying in North America. They didn't exactly head into this first week of 2022 with as much fire as they did before. Obviously, this wasn't the first week of 2022, but anyways, yeah, PuckChamp looked good in this one. They even picked a Techies in game 2, which, I mean, I think that was the first in the DPC, so I'm all about variety, but Techies, really? Anyways, PuckChamp takes this one. They look really good, and they are now secured for top 3, so good for them on that. As for Hellraisers, again, as I previously alluded to, taking a little bit of a slip down here. They notably were that one team in the division that had less games played than everyone else, but they were doing very well, so they had a few games in hand, and as nice as those games in hand are, you still have to win those games in hand, and again, they really struggled with that this week. Following that, we had Navi taking down Gambit, getting a little bit of a nice win after 2 very hard-fought series up against Spirit and Hellraisers, where they just weren't quite able to win those series, but they put up a hell of a fight. So this was a real nice win for Navi here, just finally getting the results that they've been playing so well for. Following that, on January 14th, we had the showdown of the 2 bottom seeds of the division. We had Mind Games, previously known as Unique, taking on Empire, and Mind Games just kind of dominated here. I gotta say, they looked really good. Obviously, in my power rankings, I touched a little bit more on it. They ended up moving up quite a bit. I was pretty impressed here, and now that they've got that series win under their belt, they have a chance to actually avoid relegation, despite the fact that this was the first series that they've actually won in this entire tour. Following that, on January 16th, just earlier today, we had Team Spirit taking down Hellraisers. So again, Hellraisers kind of going down a downward spiral. Obviously, they're playing against 2 of the toughest teams in the regions right now. PuckChamp and Spirit have both been playing fantastic Dota. Spirit specifically has just, well, they're playing as themselves from what we know them for. And honestly, Hellraisers, it really felt like the series kind of got harder and harder as it went on. Yeah, again, I'm a little bit worried with them for some other teams that I talked about in my power rankings video, where I kind of lowered them down the board because I really didn't feel like they were up to par with the best teams in the region. That's kind of what it's felt like for Hellraisers. They got that nice win at the start of the season, beating Virtus.Pro, and then building that momentum by beating some of the, again, lower tier teams in the division. But it really feels like now that they're starting to play against the top dogs of the region, they are taking a bit of a dip. So, taking a look at the standings now, we have Spirit sitting in first place with a perfect 6-0 record. Again, they have looked fantastic. I believe the only game that they've lost so far was that one to Navi last week. They're looking really good, and they are secured for the major if there ends up being one. Same thing goes for PuckChamp, who sits in second place currently. They are now finished their season, or their tour, I should say. They finished with a 6-1 record. Again, very, very impressive. That only series loss to Team Spirit. Following that, in third place, moving up 1 spot from last week, and it's been a slow, steady climb for Virtus.Pro since the start of the tour after they had a really rocky start. But they look really, really good, especially, again, in that series earlier today with Virtus.Pro and Navi, which I guess I forgot to talk about, actually. They look really good in this one, and honestly, now they've got themselves back into contention, and with Hellraisers taking 2 losses this week, they're tied now for third place, meaning that if they win their last series, then they have a very realistic chance of making it to the first major. However, their last series is up against Team Spirit. We have yet to see these teams meet up. It was probably, before the tour started, my most anticipated matchup, and I think it still kind of is now, especially since VP's really been playing a lot better as of late. They made some changes to the roster for the back half of this tour. I don't know if they're official changes or just a stand-in, similar to MSS standing in for Nightfall for Evil Geniuses. Both of those teams, however, Virtus.Pro and EG, have kind of had the same kind of arc these past couple weeks where they started off really weak, made a little bit of a change, and now they're kind of on that upward trajectory again. As for Spirit, yeah, again, they're playing against Virtus.Pro. Hellraisers, their last series is up against Empire. So again, very likely that they win that one. Not to get too ahead of myself, but again, Empire's been having a really rough season so far. They're 0-6. So Hellraisers, there's still a very realistic opportunity that they finish top 3. Virtus.Pro has to take down the best team in the region, whereas Hellraisers just has to beat the bottom team of the region. I would really love to see both of these teams win their series because, again, I love tiebreakers. But it feels kind of unlikely, right? Following that, in 5th place, we have Navi, who have concluded their first tour. They finished with a 3-4 record, which really doesn't tell with just how well they were playing this past month. Obviously, again, talking on those series against Hellraisers and Team Spirit, and then finally getting that win over Gambit. However, they end off kind of weak. That series against Virtus.Pro was one of the worst that they had played in this tour for sure. It went from when they were playing against Team Spirit and Hellraisers that they were playing really well but not getting the wins, and then now today they just didn't play well at all. So again, kind of an unfortunate way to end the tour. They weren't going to be making it into the major unless both Hellraisers and Virtus.Pro lost their next series, which is pretty unlikely. But again, kind of ending off a little weak there. Then in 6th place, moving up one spot with their win this week, we have Mind Games, who is 1-5, tied with Gambit right now, who's 1-5. Gambit and Mind Games actually play against one another, so there will not be a tiebreaker for this bottom 2 spot because whoever wins is staying in the division, which I think is pretty intense. It's basically just a tiebreaker that is a best-of-3 format rather than a best-of-1. And then finally, again, as touched on, we have Empire moving down to 8th place as they are 0-6 and the first team to get relegated from this division. Now taking a look at some stats real quick, there have been 58 matches played in total in this upper division of Eastern Europe, 27 of those being Radiant wins, 31 on Dire, 31 of those wins being first pick, 27 on last pick. For top heroes, we have Shadow Demon, who is 5-0, Beastmaster, who is 7-2, and Weaver, who is 16-7. For a hero that's been as highly contested in pretty much every region, it's pretty surprising that the hero's been making it through the first ban phase as often as it does in this region, especially with the win rate backing it up. But some regions just like to develop the meta a little bit differently, I suppose. For worst heroes, Terrorblade 1-6, Disruptor 4-10, even though the Disruptor that we saw today from Virtus.Pro looked fantastic. Again, their 5-player, who his name escapes me right now, who's filling in for Kingslayer currently. I really loved his Disruptor. He rushed a Blink Dagger, which is not something you see very much at all, but it made a lot of sense playing against a hero like Storm Spirit. As soon as the Storm Spirit zips in, bam, you just Blink Static Storm him. He's stuck there. I really enjoyed that this game. So again, he played one of the worst heroes of the division so far, but he made it look really good. And then speaking of which, Storm Spirit, 4-8 so far. For most banned, Io with 44, Monkey King with 37, and Weaver with 35. So Weaver still has one of the most bans of the region, but has still been picked 23 times, meaning he has been contested in every single game in this division. When he is not banned, he ends up getting picked. For top teams, when it comes to GPM, Spirit leads the way with 24-48, and it's actually the same 3 teams in the same order for all 3 of these divisions, so I'll just run them through by team. Team Spirit has 24-48 GPM, 29-59 XPM, which is very high, and a 5.1 KDA. For Virtus.Pro, they have a 23-53 GPM, a 28-84 XPM, and a 4.06 KDA, sorry. And then for PuckChamp, they have a 22-90 GPM, a 27-64 XPM, and a 3.93 KDA. For top GPM players, now we actually have Kuman from Empire showing up as the top GPM, sorry. Even though, again, Empire's 0-6 so far, but he's clearly having himself a real farm fest of a season. 729, then Yataro was 714, and Pure was 667. Following that for top XPM, Kuman shows up again, 769. Then GPK was 738, who's been having a fantastic season. His game, again, earlier today against Navi, that game 1 on his puck was fantastic. Navi was leading earlier on that game, and he was a big reason as to why Virtus.Pro was able to fight their way back into that game. And then for top KDA, Pure then has a 735 XPM, and for top KDA, we have Toronto Tokyo with 8.85, Young G with 7.4, and Yataro with 7.34. So, yeah, again, for 2 of the teams in this division, those being Navi and PuckChamp, they are completed their time in the tour. Navi will not have to go through any sort of tiebreakers because they are not at risk of getting relegated, nor are they going to be making making it to the major. And for, again, those top two teams, Hellraisers very likely to win their series against Empire. Virtus.Pro has to take down Team Spirit if they want to have a realistic opportunity of making it to the first major, again, if there is a major. So I'm curious to know what you guys think about this. You guys can let me know in the comments down below. All right, moving on to the lower division now, as per usual, going through it a little bit quicker. Starting off on January 10th, Namiga taking down Fantastic 5. Namiga, you know, at this point, we're already kind of out of the race for making it to the major, but ending off on a nice win was pretty cool. They're obviously not done their season yet. They have one more series up against Gambit, but regardless, it is still nice to get those wins. Following that, on January 13th, we had V Gaming taking down Bait, and Bait actually taking a game off of them. I think this was the first game that Bait actually won to this point, but V Gaming were able to snap back into it and take this series. Again, they are proving themselves to be one of the best teams in this region. Following that, we have, on January 14th, Hydra taking down Gambit 2-1, then Windstrike taking down the Rejects 2-1. Which was actually very huge because it now means that those two teams are tied in that race for that upper division slot. And finally, ending things off this week, just earlier today, we had Fantastic 5 taking down Bait 2-0. So, for both Bait and Fantastic 5, they are now completed their time in this tour. Bait ends off going 0-7. Again, I think they only had that one game win, which was against V Gaming, which looks pretty good, but yeah, it was a pretty miserable season for Bait. I was really hopeful for them, especially after their first series where they had a lot of highlights, especially in the early parts of their game, that just kind of fell apart after a little while. And it really hasn't felt like there was any building on that whatsoever. Hydra and V Gaming lead the way right now with a 5-1 record. If they win their next series, which V Gaming takes on Windstrike on the 21st and Hydra takes on the Rejects on the 20th, if they win those games, they then secure themselves that spot in that upper division. But if they manage to lose them and Windstrike and Rejects win their series, then there is a 4-way tie for those top two spots, which is super, super exciting. We then have Gambit in 5th place, who is 3-3. Namiga in 5th place, who is 3-3. Gambit in 6th, who is 2-4. And again, if they win their series up against Namiga, they are securing themselves a spot in the lower division for the next tour. If they lose, then there are going to be tiebreakers with Fantastic 5. And then again, Bait sitting 0-7. For stats now, we have 61 matches played in total in Eastern Europe, 33 of those being Radiant wins, 28 Dire wins, 34 of those games first pick wins, and 27 last pick wins. I think there was only one game that wasn't played in the typical orientation, which is Dire last pick or Radiant first pick. For top heroes, Pangolier is 5-0, Medusa is 8-1, and Marana is 9-3. For worst heroes, we have Dark Willow, who is 1-8. We then have Darkseer, who is 1-5, and Grimstroke, who is 3-10. And for most bans, we have Beastmaster with 44, Io with 43, and Medusa showing up with 38. A very surprisingly high amount of bans. But again, the win rate is there to back it up. She's been pretty successful so far in the games that we have seen her in this region. For top GPM teams now, we have Rejects leading the way with 2382, then Hydra with 2379, and Gambit with 2359. So Gambit showing up here despite having a pretty mediocre record so far. For top XPM, we have Hydra with 2879, Gambit with 2831, and Windstrike with 2793. And for top KDA, we have Windstrike with 4.57, V Gaming with 4.11, and Hydra with 3.58. For top GPM players now, we have Ramses leading the way again. I'm pretty sure he's led in every single week I've done a review so far with 771. We then have Dream with 728 and Painless with 716. For top XPM, we have Dream with 743, Ramses with 717, and Smiling Knight with 709. And finally, for top KDA, Dashak with 9.54, then Hazeshka or Haze with 8.88, and Painless with 7.61. So, yeah, again, very close finishing for this. I'm, again, hoping for some tiebreakers here. So I'm hoping that Namiga is able to beat Gambit so that there's a tiebreaker for that last slot of relegation. And, of course, I'm hoping that both Hydra and V Gaming lose their next series just so that we get to see more tiebreakers. Again, nothing against those teams. I just am a big fan of Dota, especially when there's actually something on the line, which for the upper division, if you're near the top of the upper division, turns out maybe there might not be that much on the line anymore. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about any of this stuff in the comments down below. As always, tomorrow is, I believe, South America, my review for them, which is going to be coming out after the final matches of the day. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow with another video, including my upper division preview and my fantasy picks.